Joined now by Patrick Johnston, beat reporter, Vancouver Canucks for the Province and Post Media. And, well, we had a lot of Canucks brass talking last week, Patrick, and
Yes.
Rutherford to the Bob McCowan podcast, Rick Tocchet to the Athletic, and a big happening over the weekend in hockey media with Jeff Marek no longer on the Sportsnet side of things, where, of course, he did television in the popular 32 Thoughts podcast with Elliot Friedman. First on that, what do you know? I know you cover the sports media.
Well,
what are you hearing?
I mean, obviously, lots of gossip, but hard to discuss and know what's actually out there. But I mean, as I wrote, he hadn't done anything since night one of the draft, which was odd. Now, if you go and listen carefully to the pre-draft pod, there was a note that he wasn't going to be there on day two. But it certainly does seem like he made a hasty exit. And, other than his note on, I guess, Friday acknowledging, yes, I'm not here, which came a day after my story and the story from Daily Hive and Jonah Siegel of YYZ Sports Media, that he was no longer employed. It was all a bit unusual because here it is, it's a lead name on let's be honest, the lead sort of official news outlet, suddenly disappeared. And so, that certainly nothing. I think everyone has their ears up rightly, and we're sort of trying to figure out what it is that went down. But to depart quietly and quickly as it seems to have happened, you can sort of draw your own conclusions about the possible reasons that might happen when in the role that he has, because that seems to be what it's about. It's about the role that he held and the information that was privy to him. But
it sounds like there might be some restructuring. Anyhow, but this is not part of that. Was not part of that, correct?
Certainly not my impression. No.
Yeah.
No. So it was a dramatic change. The plan had been, they had been discussing there was going to be another podcast. He was going to appear on his show. And neither of those things happened. So something happened, as far as I understand, at the draft. And it was, as someone, I think Jonah noted, it was draft related. So you can figure out what that means.
Yeah, well, I first of all, I understand he left on a red-eye flight.
Let's be clear that they did say in the previous pod that he was going to leave at that point.
Yeah.
Now, whether that meant, they said he was going to leave right away. So that part has been a bit, I think probably needs to be clarified a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But there's,
I heard the league was involved. Did you hear the league was involved?
I haven't been able to confirm that.
Mm-hmm.
You ask some questions, you hear things. But that's the discussion. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. But certainly there's been people suggesting that was the case. I know that the league, I did hear from someone earlier today that, the league has been very hard on, now that they're in the world of gambling behind the scenes, they have been very careful on on how information gets distributed, on the security of that information. You think back to remember the All-Star game in Vegas? Remember they did those sort of silly trick shots events and those kinds of things? Those were all recorded a day in advance. So, the information around that was quite sensitive. And, so that there have been things they know. Certainly the league itself knows that they understand the exposure they're in. And obviously, they have MGM Bets as a partner, and those guys are very, very, very focused on the security and safety of their betting markets. I think, for all the risks the NHL takes by having themselves, all sports leagues, let's be clear, all sports leagues are doing this, that by being so tied in with gambling now, they are aware of needing to be at least perceived as above the level. And what that comes with that is a very tight grip on security, on the information that's out there. You look at the draft and the picks that get announced on TV at the stage, there's a window where it gets registered, with the league.
Yeah.
It's only a 90-second gap. but there's a window there where there's, information that some people have that others don't.
Yeah, which is why with the other drafts, Adrian Wojnarowski on the basketball draft, Adam Schefter and others on the football draft, the league has been very, very vigilant in telling their television partners, we don't want your insiders tipping picks, even though we know they know seconds, or as you say, plus in advance of the actual announcement.
And just certainly, there, Corey Promen, I can't remember what year's draft it was, but Corey Promen literally nailed because he had his sources, right? And that's part of this job, and some people do that. And so, in a world without betting, I can see that not being an issue. But in a world with betting, where there are layers of information,
but guys, if you look at it the other way, though, having guys like Wojnarowski doing that limits the skullduggery that can happen betting wise, because they're getting it in real time rather than waiting for the registration process. If that's made public immediately via whatever route, it means that the minute Wojnarowski drops it, it comes off the betting boards, and there's no
well, that's if it does come off the betting boards at that moment.
Right. And this is one of those ones where I find myself wondering when do they stop taking money? I mean, they're anybody who's ever watched the great old movie The Sting knows what past posting is, right? But that was the window between Western Union getting the race results from from wherever, and then relaying them to betting houses around the country. This is how it used to be, and the Western Union, they literally had internal security making sure that information didn't get out from the shop to the, in between. And there was, a gap between the two.
The NHL got to stop at the pre-taping of. I mean, if they want those things to be on the boards, they got to stop at the pre-taping. That's so antiquated, isn't it?
Yeah. All right. Yeah. And you need to people are going to try to listen. People are going to try to bet on these things as long as they think that they are on the level.
Yeah.
And that's the world you're in. I mean, part of the reason why you go towards a legalized universe is to prevent dark stuff happening. But at the end of the day, dark stuff keeps happening. So there's risks in all this. There's a reason why at the end of the day, it's, whatever happened here, at the end of the day, there's reasons why I think it's a bad idea for anybody covering hockey to be betting on hockey. To be clear, I don't think that's necessarily what happened here, but as a general, I mean, this is the universe we're in. The NHL has created this. The NHL and all other sports have accepted this universe, which is that the betting's on level, and they're going to partner on it. And there are people who are going to end up with privileged information, and it's a difficult world to navigate, and the risks are huge if you don't play along.
So this is speculation at this point.
Yeah, listen. I don't know what happened here.
Yeah,
but listen, it was risk. Yeah, and listen, I'm just you're just sort of thinking what could be the possible things that could lead to something like this, and that's immediately where you go. But whether that's the case or not, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. As mentioned, Rutherford spoke last week and expressed concern about Thatcher Demko and talked about how he has to adjust some of his approaches to workouts. You heard it. What did you think?
I mean, it is an observation I've heard from others that Demko is the way he practices, the dedication, the passion he has for what he does is massive. But I think, as I mentioned before, it's not just Demko, it's the physical demands of playing reverse VH. I would really urge someone to try that, what the reverse VH position is.
Explain it.
Well, it's, you basically you're tucked in the net, but traditionally when we were all growing up, you'd have your leg that was on the post up, parallel to the post, tucking the post. And you might squeeze your other leg down, which is the standard VH. But the reverse VH, which you go and look and you'll see it immediately, is actually the other way. You keep your leg that's on the inside of the net, not the leg that's on the post. That leg stays up, and the hip and knee that would normally be tucking against the post instead basically get crouched down, and so you almost tuck in towards the post, and your glove comes up. If you're on the right post, and vice versa, your blocker comes up if you're on the left post. If you're a normal goal, left catching goal,
a little more contortion is basically.
But it's incredible contortion, and the pressure you're putting on your knees and your hips for a regular human, are insane. And then what these guys are doing is off the charts. And so, that is the basic expectation. And then to sort of prepare, like that Demko works hard, right? Like he's a hard working, there's a reason why has talked about what an important leader he is for the team, because, which is because he speaks up, he's passionate, but also just the effort level he puts in, right? Like there's a level of expectation he sets for himself that his teammates will be trying to match, because they see that is how it works. That's playing practice as you play, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, that is, it isn't what Rutherford said is not unusual for people who've been around the team to hear in general, but it was notable for the boss to say it out loud, because that articulates an active concern, I think, that we suspected the team have, which is that we need to figure out a way to keep this guy healthier. And one of the ways we're going to have to do that is probably change the way he practices.
I wonder if we're going to look back on this reverse VH and realize that it was not only bad for the goalie's health, but also just used maybe for the wrong reasons. If you read the article in Goal Mag about its genesis, it was to stop wraparounds.
Right.
It was just to make sure that you were that much more sealed on the lower third of the goal. But with the skill of players nowadays, Patrick, I wonder if and we've seen it already. We've seen a lot of short-sided goals up high with goalies in the reverse VH. I wonder if you are net ahead in the end.
Well, I mean, it's that equation of investment in the athlete versus what you have coming behind, right? Like how much talent do you have to play goal? And I think the conclusion is that the top end goalies are becoming like running backs, and their careers are just not going to be as long as they used to be. And maybe that's just the price of success. I get what you're saying. I mean, I think the odds are just as likely that they will end up evolving back towards something different.
That's what I'm saying.
As you're saying, because the game evolves and the shooters are going to evolve and they'll defend differently and they'll start figuring out, well, we'll do this, we'll do that, we'll do this.
Which is just a shame, because if you're going to evolve out of it anyway, you're just breaking goalies in the meantime.
Yeah. Well,
somebody should begin the revolution back at some point, perhaps.
Yeah, I think that's one for Woodley to go on about.
Yeah,
but
Pettersson, Rutherford said he learned the lesson that you don't have time and space in the playoffs. Okay,
sure,
fair enough. Talk it aloud. I have knowledge for him. He wants him to come into his office and share ideas, ask for things. They sent a strength coach to Sweden, and he's still building the relationship and the trust some 18 months after taking over as head coach. That sounded to me like there's still some work to do between Rick Pettersson and Rick Tocchet and the organization.
I think I noted before, when you sit back and you think about how this season went, the second half, because it was going so well, and then everything went off the rails. He started to struggle, and he was dealing with all these things, and there was so much noise. It was a scenario I don't know if anybody could have handled, but certainly he struggled to deal with. And I found myself wondering, this is the first time in his life, really, if you look at how things have gone, other than, I suppose, that concussion early in his first season in Vancouver, where things have not gone to plan. Like things have gone so well for him in his life. To run into a scenario where things are not going well, the best of us struggle to cope with that, and he, I think, was struggling to cope with that, and there's a need for a reset here, and Tocchet talks so much about mentality and focus and working with each other. I think a lot about in this context. I thought a lot about. I think he mentioned, I can't remember when it was. It might have been March. When we were kind of in the thick of what the heck's going on with Pettersson here. And he talked a lot about the mental skills coach, Alex Hodgkins, who helps who's a huge factor in this team. And you talk to the players and they're like, yeah, he's the performance coach. He talks about how to get through day to day, and, essentially encouraging Pettersson. I thought that was a telling comment. Like, there are things here to help you. We want to help you. Try to sort of build that part of the relationship. And Petter, I said, I don't know if you guys saw, there was also, he did an interview in Sweden, which the context of which was badly misreported. He spoke with the local newspaper, then it got regurgitated by Hockey Sverige, which is, like a hockey news style site in Sweden, which then got regurgitated onto other sites saying he talked to hockey, but no, he talked to the local paper, and he was running a hockey camp for the first time ever in Onya, in his hometown, which was really cool. And I look forward to asking him more about it when he comes back. But the point being was that, yeah, like he went home, reset himself, he wanted to get himself back to where he needs to be. And so it doesn't surprise me that, I mean, the initiative of Alex Trinka, who's the strength coach going over, who's the director of performance, is the sports science guy that Rick Tocchet trusts the most. They hired him away from the Penguins with purpose. To sort of him to go visit, yeah, that tells you a lot. That first of all, Pettersson would need to accept him coming, so that's good, right? Listen, he's a guy that, and he's the guy that, like, last year he helped Brock Besser find his way to where he needed to be, because one of the things that they had recognized with Besser was that he was training in a way that was probably counterproductive to what they believed he needed to be doing. And look what a summer and what a season Brock Besser ended up having. And, I asked him last fall, I said, Brock, what'd you do? It's just, in the end, it was more of the types of exercise they're doing here. And so, yeah, when I saw Alex Trinka's over there, I'm like, well, that's good, because that means it's trying to find some alignment with how you're preparing for your season. And yeah, physically we know he can do it, but in the end, it comes down to the sort of how you deal with the dips. And last year was a struggle. So here we are.
A lot of wingers brought in here. None that are certified 40 goal scorers,
right,
or anything, but the winger depth has been addressed here in the offseason. That means that, that they just don't have the means to even kick tires on Patrick Laine at this point, now that he's back, right?
And I don't think that's a player that, in the end, they've got one player they need to work with already in Daniel Sprong. Obviously, different quality finisher. But in the end, they've got one guy they're going to work with who's on a cheap deal. I just don't see Laine really being a fit here. And you're right. Like, where are you going to put him in the cap anyway? They've now officially. When I was last year, or 2 weeks ago, I guess, or 3 weeks ago, we were like, oh well, they've got some cap room. They can accrue some cap. They actually technically can still accrue some cap space, but they went and filled that space in with Daniel Sprong. And just to go back to Pettersson, to me, that's the other thing that's interesting here, is that it wasn't so much that Andrei Kuzmenko left and Pettersson's season fell off. Like, it wasn't but Kuzmenko wasn't the reason why Pettersson playing well, but it is notable that a guy that could at least play and finish. Now, he wasn't scoring a ton, but there was a, around the net ability that Pettersson just never had after that, really. So bringing a guy like Sprong, DeBrusque, like, the options now that are available to Pettersson are just better. Like, he's just going to have guys that can put the puck in it. Now, can Daniel Sprong adjust the way he plays? He's a guy that wants to have the puck on his stick, right? Like, Elias Pettersson's going to have the puck on his stick if you're playing with Elias Pettersson. So, that's the thing that Sprong's going to have to get used to, is that he is now being looked to be a finisher, a guy who's ready to shoot when the puck lands on his stick.
But you said the Canucks are ready to work with Sprong. When they signed him, you think they already knew that this was maybe going to be a personality conflict here, or what?
No, just in the sense of that, listen, we know what you're about. We believe that you can fit into this environment, but you're going to have to recognize, like, Rick Tocchet had he said 2 phone calls with him, right? Like, he literally said to the kid, like, I can help you get paid. Sorry, I'm speculating, but you can certainly
rehabilitate you.
Listen, I can get you where
it's a more than a 1 year thing here in Vancouver, but they also talked about how they have to work with the player, personality wise and defensive.
And, like, listen, you're in a crucial point in your career. This is what you need to do to get it done. Can you do that? And obviously the phone call was yes. So yeah, when they say they have to work with the player, like that's what that means. That there's a project here, and the player has accepted that there is a project here, which is that he wants to not just be known as a guy who can put the puck in the net, but the guy who thrived playing with Elias Pettersson or JT Miller or whoever.
It can be depended on and
Mhm.
all that. Yeah.
Talkett said he's tempted to play DeBrusque with Miller and Besser.
Yeah,
Thought he would be a great fit there on that wing before saying, no, I know I need to play him
yeah.
with Petey.
Well, but yeah, I mean that would be hell of a line, but yeah, I mean, like, listen, like you need some guy, you need a guy like how does DeBrusque fit? DeBrusque skates well, like Pettersson needs a guy that skates well. Miller sure could use a guy that skates well, but if you're looking for duos, Rick likes Tocchet likes talking about duos, right? Who's the most likely duo? I think it still is DeBrusque and Pettersson. With the third guy being someone like Heinen or maybe Sprong or maybe Höglander or whatever.
They have options. That's good.
Yeah, they do have options. Fine. Or Blake's favorite guy, Vasily Puckles.
Right. Also, Tocchet again telling the Athletic that they were just so damn bad defensively that they overcoached and had to formalize a defensive system and structure for last season and perhaps to the expense of offensive hockey and more creativity. But he's committed to freshness. He's committed to giving them more rope. Some guys will be allowed to toe drag once they reach the blue line, name checking JT Brock and Petey in that regard. So what do you think? Tocchet 2.0 and a little looser and more creativity allowed with this group of skaters. How do you see this going?
Well, listen, he's a guy that openly acknowledges he tries to learn from himself, right? This is the most talented team he'd ever coached, and they went a long way. And in the end, what he tried to execute worked. And then all of a sudden they stopped scoring goals. And some of that was system, probably some of that was luck. There is no doubt that they became a very strong defensive unit, but yeah, like there were some plays. I know, he referenced a couple things when they were still in the playoffs. And I think having talked around, I think there was the idea of the sort of same side dump in. I think there were moments where they recognized against Edmonton that if they'd done a little more dump-ins and kept the puck on the same side, turn Edmonton around on the court. I mean, there were goals that the Panthers scored that literally came from that. And so it's learning things like that. How do I instruct that better in hindsight? How do I get my guys to understand a little more quickly? I mean, he's a guy who sees the game at an incredible level. And I mean, I used to say this, I realized this long ago when I was playing and coaching, and I bounced this off, NHLers, and they absolutely agree that, there are several types of players. There's the players who can do it and can see it, right? They can see it and they can do it. That's Elias Pettersson. There's guys that can see it. There's guys that can't see it but can do it. That's probably like Jake Virtanen. There's guys that can see it but can't do it. Those guys usually end up becoming coaches. And then there's guys who can't see it and can't do it, and those guys don't even make the NHL. But the point is that Tocchet is a guy who clearly can see it and can do it, and his task is to try to help his players see it, who maybe, whether they struggle or they don't know, whatever, his job now is to explain what they're trying to do. Here's what they're doing. How do I explain this? And how do we take advantage of that moment? And clearly what we've seen from him and what he's discussed in his sort of ambitions for this season is that, yes, I recognize that the plan didn't quite work in the end because they lost the last game of the season, as they like to point out. They would like to win the last game of the season.
Yeah, well, they say only one team does that. That's not exactly accurate. You have some non-playoff participants who
yeah, they don't want to be that. That's for sure.
Marvelous stuff, Peach. Thanks for this. We'll catch up.
Take care, guys.